Hey everyone, Jonathan Alexandratos here, they, them pronouns. I'm a toy historian, writer, teacher, and Star Trek figure collector extraordinaire.
Hi, I am Schubert Tam. I'm the founder of EXO’6’s Star Trek Toys, and you are listening to Trek Untold.
Hello and welcome back to Trek Untold, the Star Trek podcast that goes beyond the stars. I'm your host, Matthew Kaplowitz. My love of Star Trek began with, and was rekindled with, the toys. I can remember playing with my original Galoob TNG figures when they first came out, and I can remember that magical Christmas where I received the entire first wave of the Playmates version of that very same crew. Decades later, picking up some random Star Trek toys at a convention was what got me interested in revisiting the entire series, and that's ultimately what led me to starting this very podcast. So on today's episode, we're going to spend some time honoring the action figures of Star Trek, both old and new. In order to do that, I'm chatting with two different guests today. First up is Jonathan Alexandratos, a writer and a toy historian who is also a massive Trekkie and collector of Star Trek figures, among many, many other things. We're going to take a look at the late 80s and 90s Trek toys, going from Galoob to Playmates, and a little discussion of Art Asylum as well, to discuss the boom period of those toys, the way they ultimately crashed and burned, and how this line helped toys in general go from kids' playthings to adult collectibles. From there, we're going to chat with Schubert Tam, the founder of EXO’6’s, a company that makes highly detailed and incredibly lifelike 12-inch Star Trek figures from across the franchise. We're going to learn about how his company produces their unique products, as well as get some info on upcoming releases. And some of these might be some first-time reveals. So stick around, since it's a little bit of the old and a little bit of the new, but most importantly, it's all fun and games because we are talking Star Trek toys. But before we begin this week's episode, I want to remind you to follow Trek Untold on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Trek Untold, all one word. You can get show updates, check out some fun memes, and let me know what you think about what's going on with the current events in the Star Trek universe. You can also support this show directly on Patreon at patreon.com/TrekUntold, where you can support this show for as little as $2 a month. At higher tiers, you can listen to the shows before they come out, know about my guests well in advance, and even have a chance to ask them questions, get transcripts of these episodes to make sure you get all the info, and more benefits coming soon, including watch parties and live streams. But that's all dependent on more fans like you coming over and letting me know you want to be a part of events like that. If you want some Trek Untold merchandise, check out our store for gear and apparel, including shirts, hats, stickers, water bottles, notebooks, and a whole lot more. New designs will be added throughout the year, so it's always worth taking a peek. Trek Untold also has an Amazon shop where you can peruse everything Star Trek, sci-fi, and geeky on Amazon in one convenient location. If you're looking for a gift for the Trekkie in your life, or maybe want to see some of my favorite non-Star Trek things that you can get for yourself, check out the link for my Amazon shop in the show notes on the audio version and in the description below this video on YouTube. If you're listening to us on iTunes or any other audio platforms that allow for ratings and reviews, please leave us a 5-star rating and a positive review to help out this show. If you're watching it on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe to us at youtube.com/TrekUntold and give the video a thumbs up and a comment. All of these things help more people find this show and to continue growing and bringing you awesome guests each and every week. Now, without further ado, let's beam in this week's guest. Computer, access interview file. And welcome back to Trek Untold. And now, joining me on the other side of the screen, they are an expert in all toys, ranging from dolls to figures and even what came in your favorite nostalgic Happy Meals, plus a lover of all things Star Trek. You video viewers can tell because they are currently in one of their uniforms right now. So what makes them such a renowned authority on toys? Well, you're about to find out. Today, we're welcoming Jonathan Alexandratos to the show. Jonathan, how's it going?
It's going great. Great to be here. Thanks for having me on. I love talking toys with you, and I'm so excited to dive into all the many layers of Trek plastic that's out there. Trek diecast, Trek cloth, maybe. I don't know.
Probably, yeah. I'm pretty sure there's some soft good
Trekness.
stuff out there too. Yeah.
Sure.
So, Jonathan, normally I have a question I like to ask my guests first. We're going to come back to that. I think right now I actually want to just go back to something I already mentioned here because I mentioned favorite nostalgic Happy Meal toys. And I know that Star Trek did do some fast food tie-ins. Do you own any of that stuff?
So I do. Not only do I own those toys, but I own the original Happy Meal box that
Oh, wow.
came in. So 1979 for the movie at McDonald's. This was their first licensed IP that McDonald's did as a Happy Meal toy. Obviously, there are plenty of other um, fast food chains that did McDonald's toys too. Dairy Queen did Deep Space Nine. Overseas, you'll see some Pizza Hut and some McDonald's as well doing TNG. Great kids meal toys out there for McDonald's. But yeah, so I've got the toys. I've got the box that you just saw. I love those things. Absolutely love them.
Yeah, I think it was Burger King, right? Who did the Abrams ones also?
Burger King did the Abrams ones. Yeah,
Wow.
that's exactly right. Those are great too. But I just want to say too, since I have the box here, this is the only time that the Enterprise canonically burps right there. So it does have the ability to do that, which I think is kind of a fun addition. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Burger King with the Abrams was the Abrams tie-in stuff was great because you had Kellogg's doing those in the cereal boxes. You had Burger King, as you said, yeah, with, not just the toys but the glasses too.
Yeah, that was a really good time for Trek merchandise because that was kind of like the revival. But I think we'll come back to the Abrams stuff because that's got
Oh
its
yeah.
good and it's got its bad. Yeah, definitely
Yeah.
has its bad. So, yeah, Jonathan, let me give you the actual first question I usually ask guests, and that's what's your earliest memory of Star Trek?
Earliest memory of Star Trek probably is like my earliest memory of life. I was sitting in the basement of my childhood home. I was, I'm sure, no older than 6, possibly younger, and I had been shown Star Trek younger than that. It's just obviously I don't have the memory, but I do have the memory being in that basement. It was those like wood paneled walls, that were big in the 80s and 70s and all that. The carpet, sitting on the carpet, looking up at the cathode ray TV that looks kind of like the one behind me there, and it was a double header. It was Miri was on first, the TOS episode, and then Encounter at Farpoint. Probably just half of it, I would imagine, right after that. Uh, and I just remember vividly those two coming on in that order when I was just a very young kid and being enthralled. First, horrified by Miri because the makeup in that is terrifying, um, and then second, sucked into Encounter at Farpoint because of the effects in it. I mean, for me as a kid, I just had never seen anything like that, and I thought it was really cool. And I thought the uniforms were cool, and I thought that everybody looked pretty hot, and that was fun. And like and obviously as a kid, that's not really what it is now, but like still, like it's like a bunch of attractive people in space. Why would you not want to see that at any age?
That's true. That's very, very true. And a fun fact I don't know if you know about Miri, because I actually interviewed two of the folks who were kids on that episode, and they both came back to Star Trek years later as adults.
Yeah,
But one of the stories they told was that really scary kind of looking makeup character.
yeah.
When that character runs onto the set, the kids didn't know what they looked like, so they were legitimately scared and freaked out in that scene. So that's all authentic.
Oh, terrific. Oh,
Terrifying,
the
right?
60s. Wow, when you could just scare children and blow up horses in the westerns. Why not? Screw them.
Hollywood.
That yeah, seriously, right? Wow. I kind of feel bad for those kids actually knowing that. Like, I don't know. I mean, you're just trying to go to work, do something you enjoy.
Like they can't remember much else from the episode other than being scared completely out of their pants. But
Yeah.
yeah. So
Which is funny as an audience member, knowing that that's kind of true for me too, but on a different level because I wasn't there like those guys were. That's crazy. Wow.
yeah. So, I guess on that same token here, let's go one step further because this is going to be the Star Trek toy episode here.
Yeah.
What's your earliest memory of Star Trek toys? What was your very first Star Trek toy, if you can remember?
Yeah. So I feel like well, as a kid, I had some of the Galoob line, the 3.75 inchers, specifically Captain Picard. But I remember very strongly my dad getting me a Jadzia Dax figure loose
Ah,
from a local comic shop called Dragon's Lair in Knoxville, Tennessee, which is not there anymore. It was my childhood comic shop. And they had underneath a case of glass, they had loose Star Trek figures for, I don't know, maybe $5 or something. And so I got the Jadzia Dax figure, and I remember it was a hot summer day, and I didn't want to leave her in the car because I thought that the plastic would get all like melty and everything. And obviously it's not going to get hot enough to melt plastic, but I just didn't like the way it kind of got flimsier in the heat, you know? So I'd always take it with me. My dad would be like, it's not alive, right? You could leave it in the car. It's fine. I'm like, no, you don't understand. It's a collectible. Like it's, you need to make sure that the plastic doesn't melt. And obviously it's like my kid brain trying to explain that. So I feel like it's probably Jadzia Dax, even though the Galoob stuff was out earlier. I certainly wasn't like buying it off the shelves. So the Galoob stuff that I got as a kid, I'm sure I got from toy shows, like local toy shows that again my dad would take me to. So I believe that the Galoob stuff probably actually came later in my collection, even though it was released first.
yeah, for me actually, and it's gonna be one of those episodes where I'm gonna probably talk a bunch too, which is very rare in
Good.
Trek Untold. But since
Yeah.
these things are totally in my frame of view, also, yeah, this is a big part of me. Yeah, I think the Galoobs are. Yeah, well, I know for a fact the Galoobs were my very first. I've got a lot of vivid memories of having those, and like I can even remember the very first episode of TNG when it first aired. And I definitely didn't have my toys yet, but I can remember. I'm pretty sure it was that Christmas most likely, or if not that Christmas, the one after, where I had all those toys because they were guarding the cookies for Santa.
Oh,
So
amazing.
yeah, with their
Did you
phasers
have
drawn.
any of the vehicles from the Galoob line too? Did you get the
As a
shuttle
kid,
or the
no, and
Ferengi
I guess
fighter?
we're gonna probably end up jumping around a lot here, but yeah, as far as the Galoob figures go, I mean, it was a very short-lived line. It was the first
Yes.
line for TNG, and while they did make some vehicles, I didn't get them until I was an adult. And
Yeah,
for folks
same.
who don't know, like they made basically the shuttlecraft, and they made a really cool choice here. They made a Ferengi Marauder. They made a Ferengi ship, which was that I own. I have that in box,
Yeah,
which
same.
is a really
Yeah.
cool ship. Yeah, very cool.
It's great. That's such a cool ship. I did as a kid have the diecast Enterprise. Did you have that?
Not as a kid. Again, as an
Yeah,
adult, I had that. That
later.
thing you could kill a person with.
You can. It's so heavy. And I remember as a kid, I didn't fully understand how to get the saucer section back into the battle bridge section. And I kept trying to basically bang it together. The paint would get all chipped to hell. As an adult, I did it. I'm like, oh, this wasn't that hard. But as a kid, I just, for whatever reason, it just baffled me. That was an interesting choice because you're right. It was such a heavy toy. And the paint, I mean, paint in general, I feel like has a hard time staying on diecast when it's not like a Hot Wheels car or something. Like when you're just like painting it the way you would paint an action figure, it's not the best. So that would always get chipped off. But it was cool. I mean, it was cool to have like a really heavy toy that was the Enterprise. But yeah, the plastic figures that could fit in the shuttle and the Ferengi fighter, the Ferengi Marauder, those are great. Those are great, and such good likenesses, don't you think? Like the faces were actually pretty good.
Yeah, I think to this day I'm actually still pretty impressed by them. I think they did a really good job capturing the look and feel of them. I mean, even the bodies, while they were kind of like skinny and maybe less, I don't want to say muscular, but definitely less voluminous than like what Playmates would do a few years later.
Right.
It's still read like these were the characters.
Yeah.
Good likenesses. Yeah, really good sculpt that holds up, especially holds up because they're very fine too. That's the thing. It's like they're
Yes.
very finely detailed.
Yes.
Yeah, they look really good. And it's unfortunate though because I feel like we mentioned there's the diecast Enterprise, there's the 3 3/4 inch figures. There's also some like a little Type 1 phaser that was like a
Mhm.
keychain also or something like as far as the line of
The
toys itself, it was kind of mixed up with what they were trying to
From the
do.
Galoob line, it was a little bigger. I know that keychain you're talking about because I have that too. But the Galoob phaser was about like that maybe,
Yeah,
because I have it on my dresser, and for protection.
yes, of course.
And the light in that thing is really bright. I will say that in that specific phaser, so you could actually do some damage with it. But the have you heard the story of the bearded Riker from that line?
I have, but I think there's a lot of folks who might not know. This is a really
Okay,
fun, odd little
it's a
story. So yeah,
fun
let's please go.
story.
Let's talk about
Have
the
you seen one?
not in the wild, but I
Yeah,
do know they
same.
exist. I've seen them. I think I've seen one on eBay or something. But yeah,
Yeah. So, well, and the thing is, so the full story is that with the original Galoob TNG figures, you could actually mail away and get a bearded Riker. But the way they were making the bearded Rikers was somebody in the Galoob office was just taking the clean shaven one and then with a Sharpie just going and giving Riker a beard and mailing it out to whoever sent in enough to get it. I have no idea how many of those actually were sent out. Do you have any knowledge of the number on that?
Yeah, the thing is, it's like so hard to get an actual authentic number because it's
Sure.
based, like you said, someone can just take a Sharpie and claim it's the original thing.
Exactly, which is what makes it so frustrating. Like if I ever saw like a bearded Riker that actually had the provenance to back it up, uh, that would really interest me. But otherwise, I don't know that I could make the investment because it's so easy to do the way they were actually doing it. You could do it yourself if you wanted. If you literally bought one of those Rikers for $10 or less and just drew on a beard, that's what they did. So you're good. You got it.
I mean, you know what the crazy thing is too about the Galoob figures is you can still basically find those Galoob figures on package for fairly cheap. Like I can still go to conventions and find them for like $10 and less, and chances are if you buy a bunch of them, you can bargain down because that's the thing we toy collectors do. But the funny thing is like that's just the Starfleet crew. If you want to get the aliens, then you're screwed because those
They're
aliens,
up there.
you have them. Yeah,
I got them right
yours
up
are
there.
great.
Yeah.
But yeah, folks who don't know, like the aliens were super rare and they continue to be super rare, and they are like worth so much more money. Like Q especially is a big one, but the Antikin, there's a bunch of others. I only have like two of them, honestly. The Celia.
No, those are, it's true, those do sell for a lot. I have noticed in recent years some fluctuation in the market on those a little bit, but you're right that they do definitely sell for more than just the standard crew does for sure. But they're fun. It's fun to kind of see which characters Galoob kind of thought might take off in the early days, or figures that maybe the show kind of wanted to push a little more, because the Ferengi, they really thought those were going to be the big bads. So that makes sense that they would want to invest a lot in there. The Seeley and the Antikins, they pop up in an episode, and then I don't think we see them again after that. So that's an interesting choice. But now actually we're lucky because the Galoob figure to get right now is part of the cheap set. It's the Tasha Yar, because they just made the Armus from Super 7, and it's in scale with that figure. So you can finally stage Tasha Yar's death outside of the applause diorama if you don't have the applause diorama, which doesn't move. So now you can make it a more active thing, and it's great. Like, I mean, what a wonderful, sad moment in Star Trek history that was.
Yes, very.
Yeah.
A kind of fun note too, actually, just talk about those figures, and this is a fun little piece of trivia. So technically, the Antikin we could actually say is the very first action figure of Mark Alemo.
Yeah, that's
because it actually, if you look in the back of that packaging, that's his headshot in that makeup because he played that character. Yeah. And then if we jump forward a little bit to Playmates, when they did their first, I think it was part of the first wave, they did their figure of the Romulan. And guess what? That's Mark Alemo again.
Which it was going to be in the Galoob as well.
Yeah,
because Galoob had that planned, but they didn't get a chance to release it. So you'll see, prototypes of that floating around out there from time to time with his face there on the card.
But since we mentioned that prototype too, I think it's a good time to mention the unproduced Wesley Crusher from Galoob.
Yeah. Yep. The unproduced Wesley Crusher. That's the other one that you'll see out there, which is too bad. It'd be nice to get him in the sweater, but Super 7 did put Wesley Crusher out like that, so you could get him in scale with the few less points of articulation, but at least the likeness is kind of there. But I do like that. I do like that Wesley. I do like that Romulan. I wish we got him. There's someone on eBay selling Beverly Crushers, but I don't. Those are not authentic prototypes of anything. That was all of the Galoob people have said we never got around to actually making that. So you can get customs, which actually kind of look like kind of fun customs, but it's not authentic prototype product. Yeah. So the data stuff though, Galoob spotted data versus regular data versus blue data, that's fun.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of other datas out there too. It's crazy how much this Galoob line actually has to it in terms of like variants that weren't meant to be variants, but became variants. And it's some other unproduced stuff. Yeah, let's talk about some datas. You could have a literal fistful of datas.
A fistful of datas. So here is what we would call spotted data, and I'll try to get him as close to the camera as possible. And
Oh yeah,
maybe,
he's got some acne or something on him.
yeah, exactly. You can see some of those spots, which are not obviously supposed to be there, that happen due to plastic quality, and that is a thing that has plagued a number of toys over toy history. They either turn green or they get spotted or something like that. That's a plastic quality issue, and it happens. For example, it's very hard to get a James Bond Moonraker 12-inch toy that's not like green and zombied because of that plastic.
Yeah.
So that happens, and then there were other sort of variants of that were bluer in appearance, and then there were ones that kind of looked pretty normal, like Data does, and I remember in the 90s that was all the rage, to try to get like the spotted Data versus the blue one versus the that one, the normal one. And now I don't know that many people care, except for maybe us, but like it's still, it's like the Boba Fett circles on the fists, in the
Yes.
90s, and where everybody's fighting over, like, is it half circle, full circle? And now everybody has moved on with their lives, but
You would
but
think so, but I actually put up a video a few years ago on my YouTube channel unboxing one of the Playmates Ferengi figures. And it turned out I actually got the rare version. I got the rare version that has, like, I think it was the unpainted boots.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I didn't
yeah.
realize that till I opened it, and I got like a few comments like, "You ruined it," and I'm just like, "Well, did I though?"
Yeah,
I mean, this thing was like still $5 when I bought it. I'm pretty sure if you look around, you can get them for the same price.
Yeah, exactly. Because for every fan that kind of will open a Ferengi that's like that, there's a seller that will also sell you a Ferengi that's like that for not very much money. So that's the saving grace.
Yeah,
There, you're not going to retire on Ferengis, nor spotted Datas.
exactly. Yeah.
Trek Untold will return momentarily.
Trek Untold is sponsored by Triple Fiction Productions. Celebrating 15 years in business in 2023, TFP creates 3D printed Star Trek and sci-fi inspired items that fit into any collection. Whether you're a cosplayer who wants a Starfleet phaser, a Bajoran tricorder, or a Klingon dagger, or a toy collector looking for that special accessory or diorama to make your figures truly stand out, Triple Fiction Productions has exactly what you need. And for you figure fanatics, that includes products that are the perfect size for Galoob, Mego, Playmates, and everything in between. All products are 3D printed in the US, with new designs constantly being updated on their website. Repeat customers can sign up for TFP's loyalty program for free, which is a great way to save money as you build your collection. Repeat customers can sign up for TFP's loyalty program for free, which is a great way to save money as you build your collection. Repeat customers can sign up for TFP's loyalty program for free, where the more you order, the more discounts you receive. TFP also has a pay what you want section, where clearance or misprinted items are available at a discounted price. Best of all, every product can be shipped worldwide. As a special bonus for listeners of this show, Trek Untold has a special discount code just for you. Enter Untold10 at checkout for 10% off of all orders with no minimum purchase required. That's 10% off using Untold10. To see all of their products, head to triple-fictionproductions.net. Or to stay up to date on their newest products, find them on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Triple Fiction Productions, where something is only impossible until it happens.
Have you ever watched a YouTube video and said you wish you could do what they were doing? Whether it's the filming, the production, the editing. Maybe you listen to your favorite podcast and you wondered how they put that show together, how they got that great sound quality, what gear they use, how much does it cost to get started? Or maybe you checked out a video or read a book about one of your favorite entrepreneurs and it made you say, I want to live that life. I want to do what they do. Then check out my podcast, Toys and Tech of the Trade. I'm Rich Butler, and I've been making podcasts for almost 2 decades, speaking with experts across all fields to get to the bottom of the hows and whys of their achievements. Each week, I sit down with these amazing people who have carved their own path in life and share the gadgets, the gear, and the tech that they rely on to create their content, the methods that they use to run their business, and the habits and trends that are part of their daily routine and their way of life. And all of that, of course, gets put together to make them successful. We pull back the curtain on the process to help you understand what these people do differently so that you can draw inspiration and get ideas and be inspired so that you can take action today. This podcast is inspiring, educational, it's enlightening, and most of all, it's a lot of fun. I want you to join me on this journey so that you can use the tools and advice shared in this podcast to level up your business or creative endeavors, giving you all the tips, tactics, and tools so that you can transform what you're doing from a side hustle into a full-time lifestyle where you can collect a paycheck for doing what you love. Check out Toys and Tech of the Trade wherever you listen to podcasts, and check out the RageWorks Network at RageWorksNetwork.com for more info on this podcast and all of the many other great shows that we have on the RageWorks Podcast Network. That's Toys and Tech of the Trade with some assembly required.
That's kind of the interesting thing about Star Trek toys is, really, unless you're talking about like the Migos, for example, for the most part, unless it was like a super duper legitimately limited edition figure, you could buy them today, most of the 80s, 90s ones, for cheaper than what they were when they first came out.
Yeah.
And
generally speaking.
Yeah, I feel like Playmates is kind of the cause for that ultimately. Like, it was both a good thing and a bad thing how they did their toys. And I mean, if you'd like to talk about that, actually, we can kind of explain what Playmates did when they took over the license and how that kind of ultimately led to its downfall.
Yeah, it's a pretty good segue, because right after the Galoob stuff ended, Playmates got the license in the early 90s, and then just kind of proceeded to make everything all the time. So whatever thing you could think of in Star Trek has probably been a Playmates figure at some point in time, and they basically dominated that from early 90s to like 98-ish. And what Playmates did is, well, they did a number of things that are different than Galoob, and actually different than anything that had been done before. The first, probably most memorable thing, is on the bottom of every foot, they individually numbered every single figure. So now every single figure became a collector's item, officially numbered, like an art print or something. You looked at the bottom of the foot, there was your number. Now, the only problem with that really was the number was out of something like, several 100,000, right? Yeah. So it's not really like getting something that's super limited. But I do remember as a kid, we would check those numbers to see who got the lowest one. And the lowest ones we would get would be like in the thousands, once or twice, something in the hundreds. But now, with hardcore Playmates collectors, there are folks who like try to get ones or twos or even zeros, which are kind of just internal samples and stuff like that. So that sticks. The figures were bulkier. So if you think about kind of a He-Man figure, obviously it's not that to that extent. But I guess if you think about Playmates' other line, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, those were also bulkier. And again, when you're thinking about Trek, you're not thinking about ones that are that muscular or that bulky. But they're more in that direction than, say, a Galoob figure, which is, much thinner, slimmer. So they had that as a sort of consequence of that. The other thing people often say about them is they couldn't really sit down that great. It's true. The legs kind of splayed outwards because of the way that the joints worked on the hips. They just kind of splayed like that, which is too bad if you have the bridge playset, which is an awesome playset. Didn't do that great for that company, but it's an awesome playset.
And not to interrupt, Jonathan, but I do want to mention too, as far as those legs go, they ultimately did eventually change them. And this is a fun little bit of trivia too, is it took them many years till they made that change. But it wasn't even necessarily Star Trek toys themselves that made the change. It was because Playmates had a different license at the time. And I don't even know if anybody out there is listening to the show is going to remember this other show that was on TV, but it was Sequest. Sequest, was it 2022 or something, whatever it was called?
So Sequest, and then towards the end, Sequest 2023.
Happy anniversary, Sequest.
Yeah. Sequest was so good. You're a Sequest fan?
I think I watched it as a kid. I haven't seen it since then, so I have no idea if it holds up. I think I watched it.
I just got the whole series on Blu-ray.
Oh wow, I didn't even know that existed.
It just came out this year.
Wow.
It's so good. And by so good, I obviously mean still quite cringeworthy.
Yeah.
But if you saw it as a kid, yeah, you would have loved it. Yeah, I mean, those Sequest figures, right. So anyway, continue with that point, because that's spot on.
Yeah, so basically it was because of those Sequest toys that Playmates had the license to do that they then used those toys to change the articulation for the figures. And those toys could actually sit down. So instead of them being bow-legged, they actually had like proper joints, and they had a thigh cut as well. So that gave them better range of motion, and they decided, let's just make whole new molds for the Star Trek toys, and boom, we finally got figures that could fit, like the Voyager line, the Deep Space Nine line. Ultimately, most of the TNG guys, you wouldn't really get them again in their proper uniforms, but at least we got DS9 and Voyager sitting the right way, so that's something.
Yeah, so thinking about that, originally in the 90s, you got TNG from Playmates. After they got through a few of those seasons of TNG and a few waves of TNG, you started to see the classic movie stuff come out. So you would get stuff for the motion picture, and you'd get obviously Deep Space Nine. At that time, you would also start to get dolls. So you'd get 12-inch dolls. Some of those are quite good. Some of my favorite Playmate stuff are in that maybe 12 inches too tall, but maybe more like 9.
I think some of them
right?
were 8. Most of them were like 8 inches, and then they did a second subset that was like the more quote unquote higher end versions that were 12 inches.
Yes, right. Exactly. Yes. They did a wonderful Sherlock and Watson that were Data and LaForge in that scale. Those were KB Toys exclusives, but they're great. You would also see the Space Talk series come out. This is all mid-90s. Space Talk series were, I would say, 7-ish inches tall. You push a button on the back and they would say lines that they said on the show. You get Picard, you got Riker, you got Q, you got the Borg. You would get ones that have action features. They were a little bit taller than your standard early 90s Playmates figures. You would get a Q that could actually fence, and I believe Riker that could shoot a rifle. They would start to play around with these action features as the 90s kind of wore on, and the DS9 figures and the Voyager figures came out, which were in that kind of standard scale comparatively to the original TNG figures. You got play sets. You got ships, electronic ships in there, all of which were, I thought, outstanding. But one of the things that happened with regard to those play sets, the reason you don't get too many of them, and the reason to this day play sets are pretty underproduced, especially compared to what they were, is just because they didn't sell that well. And the bridge playset, in my opinion, is beautiful. The transporter playset, they actually patented the technology to do that through that playset, which is, it's not like a figure is actually being transported, but you're putting the figure in a specific device that makes it look like it's there 1 minute and then gone the next. So that's original technology to them. I think that's a pretty cool play set. You had the engineering play set from Generations. That's a great one because first time you kind of get a warp core. So those are fun. The ships are fun. Obviously those sort of legacy 12-inch dolls are, I think, really cool and detailed. Basically, the bigger you get, the more detail you can kind of put in there. So they got more detail, and those bigger ones also got better uniforms that were at least closer to the show, closer to show accurate. There were some wonderful dolls that were planned and then never made it out because towards the end of the 90s, Playmates lost the license, and there really wasn't much retail interest for them anyway. But we were going to get a Kira doll that actually came with an alternate outfit where she could dress up like that I guess it's Maid Marian in Way of the Warrior, and you could kind of flip the outfits between her from the standard to that one, and I really wanted that. I mean, you can get a standard Kira doll, but that outfit that never happened, and that's such a cool idea too, where you would get two outfits and kind of like a Barbie, you could flip them. I don't know why people didn't go for that. I wanted it.
Well, I feel like Playmates was kind of having an identity crisis, and you kind of hinted a little bit when in what you were just talking about right there with how, like, here's Space Talk, they're 7 inches. Here's their action features. These are about like 5 to 5.5 inches. Their Star Trek Generations toys had completely different uniforms, which is a different story into itself. But I think those had like a different size also. Or I believe, sorry, maybe First Contact. First Contact had they were different size. Yeah, Generations is a whole different ordeal. But yeah, First Contact had like slightly different sizes also. So I felt like they were trying to be everywhere all at once. And between that and, as we mentioned, those limited edition numbers on their feet, they're basically creating a market that just was not sustainable for themselves.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's true. And Star Trek itself, as the 90s kind of got to its end, Star Trek itself was starting to, I mean, wane a little bit. Like the sort of legacy shows were starting to fade. I guess maybe Voyager went into the thousands a bit, right? Um
Very early, yeah.
very early, right? And then we kind of had that dry spell until Enterprise. Um so one then I think wonders how to keep those figures alive, and who you're really selling them to, because if your point of reference for Star Trek is, let's say, Star Trek Nemesis, and you're looking for Star Trek Nemesis toys for that movie, that's going to be a different collector than the early 90s TNG collector was. So how can you really market that to kids? Well, I mean, Playmates never got the opportunity to even try with Nemesis. But even First Contact, I mean, First Contact they did make, which, as you said, were in a bigger scale for some reason, right? I guess probably you get more detail in or something. Maybe they thought that you were now catering to an older audience, but the older audience wasn't really, I think, going for that. Funny thing about First Contact, one of my favorite unproduced figures is in that line, which is the creepy Data one, which you've seen, right?
I have seen it.
It's
I've even asked the sculptors about that toy.
I'd be interested to, if you can elaborate on what they said, that would be awesome, because it's basically like a nude Data that's been sort of stripped away in places. The skin is kind of missing, and you can kind of see the android underneath. It's a creepy figure, and if you look at the back of the First Contact cards from Playmates, the card backs that the figures were on, you'll still kind of see a gap where they kind of photoshopped out that one, because they're like, well, we're not selling that. Uh, but there's sort of this kind of gap there nonetheless, which is kind of funny when you see all the figures lined up. Yeah, what did they say about that?
So yeah, I think it was in my episode where I spoke to Steve Varner about it, in fact, and I
Yeah.
don't think he remembered it actually that well. So,
Oh,
so part of me
interesting.
is like wondering, like, did this thing actually exist, or has it just been kind of like a fan-made thing that because there was a space in the back of the packaging, maybe they just pretended, like the fan base basically created its own myth. So that's actually still one of those untold,
Uh,
unfigured out, unresolved mysteries in Star
I
Trek toy
guess.
world.
I guess it's possible, right? But like I've never seen the prototype in person. I've seen various different photos of that prototype though. So a few people would have to be pretty committed to the bit. I mean, also Varner Studios, which is an amazing, company, but I mean, they have several, more than several, quite a few sculptors that work for them. If one of them kind of came up with that and pitched it and was just like, "Hey, what if we did this?" and the answer was like, "Yeah, maybe we'll shove it in a catalog somewhere, but I don't know." Um, and that's kind of as far as that went. That's possible. I could see that happening.
Yeah, I agree. I think that might be what the case is. I mean, it's there's still a lot of sculptors out there from Varner who haven't really spoken on the record about it, and hopefully one of these days I'll get around to talking to them also, because I want to find out. And it is a
Sure.
really creepy thing, and folks can Google it too. I mean, it's
Yeah.
like the weirdest looking toy. Like, you look at that and you're just like, could they have even gotten away with it?
Right.
Because it's definitely
Right.
pushing the envelope for Star Trek.
Yeah. I agree.
It's
I
literally
mean,
naked Data with bits of his skin peeled off.
in strategic places, so you don't,
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um,
So what
I
would you say would be the best Playmates Star Trek toy, and what do you think would be the worst? Or let's just say we'll make it a little bit easier because there were like so many of these toys. So the favorite bunch and worst bunch
Sure.
of Star Trek Playmates
Oh,
toys.
the worst is easy. And it's Tom Paris mutated. I mean, that figure sat on the pegs for so long. I looked at it. I remember looking at it as a kid and just being like, why would I ever want this? It's still given out to this day in Trekkie circles as like a gag gift. Uh, my vote for worst is Tom Paris mutated, 100%. That's easy. Best is hard. Best is hard. Because I think also with best, one has to try and maybe not be influenced by the characters that they love, because whoever you love would probably be your favorite figure because it represents that person.
Yeah.
So if we're talking about best of Playmates, I'll take a stab at answering that from a perspective that detaches the characters that I love. So I'll put those aside and not consider them, and I'll consider it solely on what those figures did within the line. So, like for example, the Data was really good because the Data from TNG had panels that actually opened up on it, and you could actually hook little instruments into there and do that. And it had that action feature, which when I saw that, I was like, oh, that's really different compared to what the other figures were doing. And I really wanted that as a kid. And I eventually got that Data, and it was so fun. Because it's a feature that gives you a lot of power. Because on the show, whoever is responsible for taking care of Data in that position, that's got to be a pretty knowledgeable person, either Dr. Crusher or Geordi. And you as a kid being able to do that, being like, oh, let's open up this android and play around in there and get him working again. That's cool. So Data, TNG Data, in with the panels, I would say the Borg from TNG, the Borg figure, because that came with attachments that you could kind of replace and remove and switch around. So for me, that's an action feature that is really cool. I have to give a shout out to the fact that they were committed to, I feel like, almost every variant of Troy, which is good. Granted, not made in equal numbers to the rest of the figures. She was short packed in the original wave of her. But I do like that you can get all of the different iterations. Flashback Janeway, that was the new Force Collectibles mail away figure. I think that's a really cool one, just because, well, I mean, the box of it is lovely. I think it's this great window box, and you get to kind of see Janeway get a variant in a cool monster maroon uniform too, nonetheless, which I'm a big fan of. And I know I said I wouldn't let that maybe influence me, but maybe it's impossible at the end of the day to fully divorce yourself from that. Those are up there for me. What about you?
Now, I think for me, you actually kind of hinted at a little bit when you were talking earlier. I think for me, it was that movie series that they did.
Yeah.
I think those combine like the best sculpts, great accessories, and the fact that these are characters we never really ever got again.
Yeah.
Because that line gave us, motion picture versions of Kirk, which, in my opinion, while the motion picture uniforms are for the most part kind of hot garbage, I always really loved the Kirk outfit that he had at the beginning of the film, the black and white outfit. Yeah. I think that's just like a really cool outfit. Like the Monster Maroon is the best overall. But something about Kirk in that era, Shatner in that era, wearing that outfit, to me, that's just like such a look. Yeah, I just like how it looks, and especially as a toy, it just is wonderful. Yes. But that entire line, it gave us a great version of Uhura, a great version of Sulu. It gave us Commander Krug. It gave us Commander Savick. Like, we got a lot of characters we wouldn't see again, celebrities who wouldn't have gotten again, with just some of the best sculpting job that they did.
And it was their only Build-A-Figure.
That's true.
If we want to put out, you could build V'ger if you bought them all from that line. So that's fine. Actually, you're bringing up an excellent point by thinking about the movies. I agree with you that those figures are outstanding. I think in addition to that, the Borg Queen that they eventually made,
yes,
for me has got it. Maybe that is even my number one. If I'm being pressured to like put one in the number one spot, maybe that's number one. Why? Because you could remove her head from the figure and you could recreate if you wanted to. Like if you had some, I don't know, toothpicks or something, you could kind of make the little thing that pulls her down from the ceiling and just inserts her into the body. It's a great figure. It does suffer from reduced articulation because of that action feature, but the likeness to her, I think, is actually really good. And that's not part of their First Contact movie line. It's part of a line that came a little bit later than that, and it's her kind of more in scale with the rest of the figures, which I really
that's a very, very good choice. Yeah, and that's actually, to be fair, we talked about the price of these toys. You can buy them nowadays for like, less than what they were in most cases. If you buy them in person, eBay, they're a little bit more money, but if you go to a toy show or a toy shop, you'll find them dirt cheap. But the Borg Queen is one of the ones that is still up there in price, because there are still a few that have a higher price tag, and that's one of them. Like the Target exclusive 7 of 9 is probably up there as well as one of the higher ones, but Borg Queen is up there and she is worth it.
Yeah,
But
she's worth it. She's worth it. What would you? Is she like at? Would you say she's around 30?
she, well, last time I saw her a few years ago was like 50 and 60.
50 and 60? Wow.
Yeah, so she's
Okay.
been going up a little bit. Yeah.
So this brings up a good dimension to our conversation. Like, what are the most valuable Trek Playmates figures currently? I mean, for me, the number one has to be Trifold Borg, right?
Yeah, the Trifold Borg is definitely the most expensive
Thousands.
Star Trek figure out. Yeah, so for folks who don't know about that one, that's an interesting piece.
Yeah.
And Jonathan, why don't you tell us about that one? Actually,
Sure.
You brought it up. Go ahead. That's a great
Sure.
piece.
Sure. Yeah, it's a great piece, and it is a tough one to find preserved, because the Trifold Borg, the reason it's called a Trifold Borg is because it's just the standard Borg figure that Playmates did, but it's on this card back that folds out basically in three ways, hence being kind of a trifold. And it was really just given out to kind of store managers or distributors, or people that were kind of on the inside. It was never really a public facing figure.
Yeah, I think it was like given away at like a licensing show, also perhaps. That might have been
Yes.
where it came from.
Yes, yes. Yeah, exactly. And it was promoting First Contact, right? Before First Contact well before First Contact came out,
Yeah,
before
I
they
think
had any figures for it.
it's very early. Whatever. I don't quite remember now. I've seen them on eBay. I saw someone recently, in fact, in a group selling one in a mangled packaging.
I saw that.
Yeah, and they were still asking for like way too much money for it, which is
Way
crazy.
too much.
Yeah, so
Way
the
too
Trifold Borg is just hard to find, especially in
Yes.
great condition. I think the other one up there is this is extremely rare, the Redemption Data.
Redemption
So we talk
Data.
about how Data is
Yeah.
like one of your, definitely one of your favorites. Redemption Data is him in the red captain uniform.
Right.
And that's literally I think the only difference with that character is just him in that uniform. And mind you, it's called Redemption because they're saying it's from that episode, but he didn't actually even wear that uniform in that episode. It was actually a different episode.
Right. And the reason it's so rare is because it was at JCPenney. And
Yeah.
it was JCPenney only figure, and produced in pretty small quantities. And also, as you said, totally wrong. Like, it's not the episode at all where Data wears the red command outfit. But yeah, but even so, even with Redemption Data, like if you think about the drop from Trifold Borg to Redemption Data, it's pretty significant. Like Trifold Borg, if you find one that is really well preserved, you can expect it to run in the thousands, I would say. Is that fair to say?
Pretty,
I
yeah,
think
I'd say so, yeah.
And
not thousands,
Redemption,
at least definitely in 4-digit territory, I'd say.
I think so. Yeah. And Redemption Data, you could probably still, I think, find that figure for like a couple hundred.
More than a couple hundred, but definitely, yeah, a bunch of hundreds. Let's
Bunch
put it
of
that
hundred.
way.
Okay,
Yeah.
fair enough. I lost an eBay bid for one, and I think it landed around 250. So probably someone got a deal on that.
That actually is a good price. Yeah,
It's a good
they got
price.
a deal.
Yeah.
But kind of
Yeah.
the fun thing about that too, I feel like we talk about the limited editions. This now I think leads into the end of Playmates,
Sure.
the decline of the initial Playmates run, because I think one of the other really expensive ones they did is they did a set of they did 3 individual figures that were limited to only 1701 of them.
Yes.
And that was a version of Picard. There was a version of Barclay, and they were super rare, really hard to get. Those are still pretty expensive. But the problem is Playmates thinking, oh, collectors are dying for these. They then re-released it into a 3-pack called the 1701 pack.
Yeah.
And
So
that was pretty much the beginning of the end.
Exactly. And so that there are 3 stages to that. So the first one is exactly what you said. We're going to release these figures in such limited quantity, 1701. And it was exactly as you said, Barclay, Picard, and Yar from yesterday's Enterprise, right? Which I felt didn't exactly nail her in that episode, but I appreciate the attempt. After they did that, they had so much hate mail come in that, hey, we want these characters, why can't we get them? They actually did another run of them individually out of 3,000. They're like, all right, we'll do 3,000 more. Still wasn't good enough, which I hear you. So then they put them out as a 3-pack, as you said, where you get all 3 of them in one set, and that was not, it wasn't limited at all. You just get it that way. So that's why now, if you're hunting those figures, the only way you could really go is mint on card, because if you're getting them loose, then you're not really necessarily even sure which of those releases it might have come from. So Yeah, I mean and I think your characterization of that as kind of the decline of Playmates makes sense because they wanted to start from a place of these are collectibles. They went a bit too far in that direction and got some hate for it. And then when they tried to rectify that, that still caused some additional hate come in because they just punctured their own market on the limited edition stuff that they just came out with. So it backs them into a corner, and they really couldn't win from that. So yeah, as a business decision, I think it was a pretty bad move.
And if we actually take a step back for a moment here and look at the entire toy industry in that time period, this is also a time period where the type of toys that Playmates is making are very much being phased out. The look, the aesthetic of them. And we're also beginning, I think, to really make way for the adult collector more so. This is the start of the adult collector period, and that's why Playmates was numbering these individually initially, because they're like, look at how limited these are. These are collectibles. This is the same time period where Image Comics was out and they were doing limited number ones. This was like the era of the number one comic, where everybody's getting one with variants and shiny covers. Likewise for toys, this is when adults are coming in and they're starting to now hold on to these toys because their figures from the 70s and 60s are now going way up in price. So they're like, well, let's just speculate. Let's buy up all of these Playmates toys. Let's buy up all these Star Wars toys. For example, Star Wars Episode 1, it was like a crazy moment in toy history because everybody was buying up these toys thinking they'd be worth thousands. And no, they were worthless. You could still buy those Episode 1 toys in the same comic store you go to, same toy store you go to buy a Star Trek toy. They're like $3. They're probably even worth less.
Cheaper now, than they were then. Yeah. Well, right, and Beanie Babies and Furbies and all that stuff on top of that. Yeah.
There's the explosion of the speculators who basically just didn't know what they were getting into, and the toy companies jumping on board saying, yeah, we can make some money, take advantage of the situation. But ultimately, they overproduced, oversaturated, and that kind of killed that segment of toy collecting.
Which oversaturation does, because I mean, He-Man suffered the same fate in the 80s once there's just so much He-Man product out there that it couldn't possibly sustain itself. I was just working on a paper with a co-writer of mine, Dan Yesbick, and we were talking about kind of this history of the collector-focused toy. And one of the things we were really kind of considering were the DC Superpowers figures in the 80s and how those were kind of created as a way basically to get Jack Kirby some royalties for his work. So he kind of redesigned his superheroes for that line specifically and kind of paid him for it. From there, you kind of get what happens in the early 90s with Todd McFarlane, who is like, well, we can actually put creator names right there on the package, and we can make these things, super collector focused. And I think Playmates' way of kind of hopping on board with that is to say, all right, well, it's not like a comic book character where we can really say this is drawn by Jim Lee, but it is something where we could individually number every single one and make them collector figures like that. So they do that. The numbers ultimately don't mean a ton, but they look nice. It's kind of a nice idea. And as they progress through the 90s, right, the look of figures starts to shift. Todd McFarlane's influence, I think, grows, and the way he's doing his figures with the Spawn stuff really starts to make an impact. Where it's bigger, it's oftentimes better articulated. The accessories are more considerable. That it's more realistic. So from there you can springboard into stuff like Marvel Legends and those kinds of figures and figure lines that we still know super well, and figure lines that have expanded to being stuff like the Star Wars Black series and GI Joe Classified series and all these lines that we're dealing with now that are kind of built on the back of those early McFarlane figures. Now, if you think about a timeline that kind of looks like that, where could you really make space for Playmates in the style that Playmates was using in the 90s? It does not fit with that legacy, because that legacy is one that leans into realism, it leans into collectors, and Playmates in the 90s with the Star Trek figures is leaning a little bit more into impressionism and a little bit more into play value and action features and stuff like that. Stuff that kids may have once upon a time really enjoyed and may still very much enjoy, but you can't really say we're for kids over here and we're for collectors over here, while someone like McFarlane is making figures that are all in on collectors, because that's kind of where collectors are going to go. And McFarlane had a pretty good history of not charging a ton for them either. So, sure, a cheap Spawn figure maybe looks a little better than a sort of half and half Trek figure that's kind of kiddie, but it's also collectory and don't really know what to do with it.
So unfortunately, Playmates didn't make it into doing enterprise toys. In fact, it would
Right.
be years later that another company would, and I think we're going to gloss over that company today. But as far as Playmates go, their initial run in the '90s was actually quite strong, but they just couldn't keep up pace with other companies. But
Sure.
this will not be the last we see of Playmates because they do in fact show up again just in time for the Abrams films, and
Yes.
we didn't actually talk about what the worst Playmates figures were for that era, but you know what? I'm just going to say this right now. The worst Playmates Star Trek figures were the Abrams movie Star Trek figures. Agree or disagree?
Out of every Playmates figure ever, I would disagree.
But for devil's advocate, I'm just going to say yeah. But yeah, in reality,
Okay.
there were definitely some stinkers that Playmates did that, like Vedic Barile. I think
Yeah.
certain female figures, unfortunately, looked really horrible, unfortunately.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, like the Lita was one of the better ones, but like Edith Keeler was stank
Yeah.
city, unfortunately. It's like it's cool that we got a figure of her, but yikes.
Well, so few of them could actually stand up on their own, which was a problem. But
Yeah.
yeah. I don't know. I don't mind Edith Keeler that much. But I think that those 2009 Trek figures that you're referring to, the JJ Treks, one of the things that I appreciated out of them was the way the bigger, I guess they were like 6-inch figures, had kind of nicely textured uniforms. I felt that was cool. Like they if you feel the texture on some of those, the bigger scale figures, they're kind of more rubbery, and I liked that. Likeness wise, in the 3.75-inch scale and in the 6-inch, and I guess in the 12-inch dolls, I don't know. Were they that bad? I didn't think they were that bad.
I mean, I can tell you, I bought some recently, just because
Yeah?
again, they were dirt cheap. So I went and got a few
Yeah.
in package. Likenesses are not so great. The thing is, too,
Okay.
like, they're all wearing those rubber tunics on top of their hard plastic body. So it's just kind of,
Yeah.
it's a weird thing to feel, and it also cuts off some of the articulation too. So
Yeah.
they definitely look a little funny. It's like they're skinny while also somehow being bulky looking at the same time. And yeah, they're just like some charm that was kind of missing from them. I think because also they were trying to be a little bit more realistic as opposed to the
Yes.
Playmates where they were more like cartoony, a little bit more kid friendly. These were like trying to skate that line where again, Identity Crisis didn't know who their market was, I feel like.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, that's fair. I think that the thing with Playmates, and I know you kind of mentioned we're sort of glossing over the interim company, but I think now it's probably better to sort of say what Art Asylum did, because with Art Asylum, that company that did the Enterprise figures and a series of TNG and DS9 and a singular Voyager figure.
Yeah. They're that truly
Um,
great gap that basically happened in between Playmates losing the license.
yeah, and in my opinion, made probably the best Trek figures ever. Uh,
Agreed. Yeah.
Very
They deserve a whole episode
realistic.
just themselves. That's why I wanted to gloss
They
over it a
do.
little bit. But yeah, no, let's talk about them a little bit though, because they are great.
So I would just say that like the only reason that maybe they should have kind of a footnote in this episode is to say that when Playmates comes back to do the JJ figures, that's the sort of legacy that they're coming off of.
Mm.
So Art Asylum makes these figures that are like beautiful. I mean, really great likenesses, nice kind of matte paint apps as opposed to kind of the glossier look of the early Playmate stuff. They're bigger, well accessorized. That's kind of what's up there, for me, because I love them so much. Cisco comes with the baseball cap, all that stuff. So when Playmates comes out, they may also be asking themselves a little bit, well, how do we kind of keep up with what they did, but also sort of not give up our own identity, or also maybe not make them for that much money. So I feel like those rubbery tunics that we're referring to are kind of a response to what Art Asylum did with the Enterprise figures, where, and this was, I felt, a very strange choice, but essentially, if you bought an Enterprise figure, they're in jumpsuits, but the plastic that's around basically their crotch area is all sort of this rubbery kind of material, basically, so you could sit them down without having a visible joint there. The effect of that for me is that it kind of just looks like they're wearing these weird shorts, over their jumpsuits. But I get what the intent was. So maybe there's a bit of an attempt with the 2009 JJ Playmates figures to sort of say, okay, well, this is sort of the realism of Trek figures that Art Asylum set up for the market. Let's try to do something in line with that, but let's also maybe not go as far into it as Art Asylum did. So if you're thinking about, well, the figures kind of feel like they were a little unsure of what they were, that's probably an accurate statement.
Hmm.
You know, I don't dislike them, maybe on the level that you do, but I would definitely agree that there's a bit of an identity crisis in there.
I mean, the toys definitely did not do that well at their
No.
initial offering. I mean, they were peg warmers. That's the term we toy collectors use for toys that just sit around. They were peg warmers.
Yeah.
And they were for quite some time. They could not get rid of these things. And that would be the last time we'd see Playmates do anything Star Trek for a very long time, until fast forward to
Right now,
2022.
baby. Yeah.
Modern
Yeah.
times. So Playmates got the license back. And here's the cool thing about them. They got Star Trek back, and they got the original sculpting team back, more or less, because Varner Studios is now again attached to making these modern toys. And now I looked at them on my YouTube channel, Nerd News Today. And I think you got a bunch also. So yeah, what are you thinking about these new toys here? Are these things carrying the torch?
I love them. You know, and you know, Varner, that's not a name anybody should gloss over. That's a name that, and you're
That is
not,
toy
but I'm just
royalty
saying
right there.
yeah, it is. And because Steve is back with TMNT as well, because he also did the TMNT stuff too in the early 90s, late 80s, I guess. So he's doing some of that as well as Trek. And I think it's beautiful. I mean, so you've got, let's think about what they are. So you've got the original Trek card backs in the US, at least, from the original Playmates line, the TNG Playmates line. So it's that Enterprise that's looks like it's kind of going out towards you from the card back. And yeah, there's a funny story we can leave for another time about me getting yelled at by the creator of those card backs, but who's a bit of a complicated guy, but still iconic box art back now. And the figures have, I think, what we would call much more maybe modern articulation, maybe articulation that one might expect a little bit more from a 2022 figure. They do kind of have a bit more of a slimmed down appearance. They're not as small as this, right? This is 3.75 inches. These are a little bit bigger than that, but they still have kind of a slimmer appearance, which I actually prefer because it's closer to how they were in the show. The accessories, I think, do a good job of being accessories that one would both like to see with the figure, but also ones that kind of reference the accessories that were coming with the Playmates figures of the 90s. So for example, the iconic phaser that had the beam sticking out of it, you know, that was molded on.
Popsicle phaser.
Yeah, exactly. That's there. So you can get all of that, and you can get Discovery figures, which I'm a fan of. So that's great. You get a Saru, you get a Burnham. And to be honest with you, I think they look great. And that's not necessarily what I've heard from every single fan. But here's my thing with that. I do not think that the job of an action figure is to be a one-to-one likeness of what you see on screen, any more than I think a fine painting is supposed to be a one-to-one representation of what you see in life. I think that the job of a fine action figure is to take what you see on screen, pull out the most relevant, important parts of that, put it in a toy, and then save some room for your imagination to kind of fill in the gaps. So as much as I like Art Asylum's hyper realism, and I do like it, I also really admire figures that are able to say, we as a company have a style. We as sculptors have a style here that we're putting onto these figures. It's not going to be a carbon copy. You'll have to do a little bit of the imaginative work, and that's okay. And I think that's actually how iconic figures are born. Nobody really looks at, a double telescoping Luke Skywalker action figure from the 70s and throws it out the window because it doesn't look like Mark Hamill enough. It's kind of cool. Like, it represents a specific time, and it's also very valuable if it's double telescoping figure. But anyway, you don't do it. So I feel like Playmates has this opportunity now to say, this is the 2022 Playmate style. If it's not your thing, it's not your thing. But that's what it is, and it happens to be my thing. I like it.
Yeah, I know our next guest on the podcast from EXO’6’ might disagree with your take on that, but I definitely very much agree with what you said. There's a lot of merit to that because it's true. It's completely true. I mean, EXO’6’ is doing high-end stuff, as we're going to be talking about later on in the show with them. But as far as the Playmates 90s Trek toys, I reviewed them, and when I talked about them, part of me very much still likes those better. I like what Playmates is doing now in modern times, but the thing is, okay, they're going for these more photorealistic sculpts. Well, I'm going to nitpick over that because that's what happens when you look at a piece of fine art. Is the minute you go in towards realism, you're now actually comparing it with real life, and it's going to always be hard because you're basically taking an idealized version of something in your head, and now you're trying to compare it to what's in front of you. It just doesn't work. So for me, it's very much the same thing. Like, I'm going to always have a special spot in my heart for those 90s Trek figures, even if they don't have the most accurate head sculpts. To me, there's enough there that I know who they are. They get the job done perfectly for me. And there's like that extra room in my head that I don't need to worry about them being identical. It's there. I can enjoy them, and they still hold up.
And I would argue too, with what EXO’6’ is doing, that's also a very important artistic voice, because you need also your Alex Rosses, who could do the hyper realistic thing, and that's cool as a project. I just don't think Playmates is doing that project. And I think, much in the same way Jackson Pollock is not doing Vincent van Gogh's project, that's fine. That's great. And the more we can kind of think of toys in that way, of this kind of artistry that has a project behind it, and we ask ourselves, well, what's the project of this figure? Then the better off we're going to be, because we'll start to accept this diverse range of looks that we really embrace.
It's very true. And today, really, we only talked about a very small segment of Star Trek toys, and that was kind of spending a few minutes on Galoob, and then really spending most of this episode here about Playmates. But there's also Mego, who we barely really talked about, and they'll get an episode on their own, trust me. Erdl, who had a little cup of coffee in the Star Trek toy world. Art Asylum, who again, I think we'll have to have you back on for that one, because they did some of the best stuff ever.
Totally agree. South Bend,
yes,
right? One of my favorites, even though they didn't do a ton. The Ballad of Palisades, what never was, right? But to this day, the only company that has actually made a Gene Roddenberry action figure, never released its prototype, but the figures of it are beautiful. You can check them out online. Tons and tons of companies out there kind of dipping their hand in the Star Trek pot. Applause, right?
There's basically a different type of toy for everybody out there. So I think this conversation about Trek toys has not ended at all, especially as we're going to jump in with in a few moments with EXO’6’, bring us into modern times. But just to kind of put a bow here on this Star Trek discussion, ultimately, there's something for everybody out there, and they're all great stuff. It's such a wide berth of toys. You can never go wrong with a Star Trek toy, really.
I agree.
Yeah. So, on that note, too, I want to mention the Gene Roddenberry figure, whole other story. But let's talk about another more important story here, Jonathan. And that's, you came out with a book a few years ago called Articulating the Action Figure. So can you tell us a little bit about what that book's all about?
So that is an anthology of academic pieces on processing toys as text. So it kind of asks the question of how do we take literary theory that some of us learned in college or graduate level English classes and apply it to toys. So the whole point of that book is to take a diverse range of toys and a diverse range of literary theories, and that includes gender theory, race theory, etc., and apply it. And the more we do that, the more we'll start to be able to understand toys in kind of the terms we were talking about them before, as these artistic texts. And that's the goal of that book. I'm working on one right now also that's on kids' meal toys, and it's basically trying to do the same thing, which is to say these things don't become cultural icons out of nowhere. And once they've achieved that status, which they have, they've been around forever, we can also access all this other theory that exists that we happily apply to Herman Melville or whoever. and we can apply it here. And when that happens, that just makes our hobby all the deeper and all the more layered and all the more interesting, in my opinion. So that's what that book does. And that's kind of what my whole body of academic work does.
So that's articulating the action figure. There's going to be links for that in the show notes below. So do make sure you check it out here if you like this discussion today. And really, I think that is kind of the thing I wanted to have you on here for, because I feel like, you and I, we think the same way about toys. And that's that they are pieces of art. They are something to analyze. Because, even though they are pieces of marketing promotional tools, essentially, to make money for companies, for collectors like us, we view these in a certain way that is very different. And, this is what I want to really get you guys out there to appreciate also, is there is a rich history behind them and all the flops and the successes with them too. But it's not just that. It's that, they are pieces of art. They are pieces of literature. They're always connected to politics in some form.
Yes.
And there's always something deeper within toys, because just like art is a reflection of life as well, toys like this truly are a reflection also of modern times and what people were thinking at a certain time period and certain place. So, they're a lot deeper than just a little thing to play with.
100%. I mean, just to drop some real quick literary theater in there. Don't turn off the don't change the dial. I promise it's interesting. Paratexts. We use the word paratext to describe stuff like action figures traditionally, because they are things created to sell a specific text. You have TNG. The TNG figures are the paratext because they're selling that. There's a great modern theorist, scholar, Jonathan Gray, who argues that there really is not that much of a difference between paratext and text, meaning that paratext has a way of becoming text all on its own. When we talk about redemption data, and we talk about how he wasn't actually wearing that costume in the episode Redemption, what that toy is doing is it's creating a text all its own, in which Data is wearing that uniform in Redemption, even though that conflicts with your knowledge of the actual episode that you saw on TV. So these kinds of moments actually tear down this separation between what we would have called text and paratext. And when you do that, and when you admit that toys are text in that way, because there is no difference between paratext and text, then we start to have a lot of fun with them. And we start to validate all these wonderful threads that come out of fan-made play and our own interpretations of the figures and kind of what we're looking for, what we're not looking for. Basically just gives geeks more shit to argue about. And that, it doesn't sound good, but I promise you, if we do it well with love, which we do, we hope, it will be great.
I'm super into that. That's a great way to look at things. And this is, for me, this episode, honestly, Trek Untold is very much a vanity episode, because I wanted to talk toys with some people, and very much want to have you on here to do this. And this is why, because you look at toys in this much broader way, which is great. So, Jonathan, thank you for dropping all these great knowledge bombs with us here today. And for folks who want to learn more about the Star Trek toys from the Playmates era, check my archives. You'll find interviews with Steve Varner and even further back, Scott Henze. These guys, besides working on Star Trek in that time period, also did Ninja Turtles. They did so much other stuff from Playmates that was like big. So these guys will tell you all about the process of making the toys, the behind the scenes stories with them too. Really great interviews. So definitely check them out if you're into the Star Trek toys. But again, Jonathan, thank you again so much for being here, talking toys. This has been real great. And I cannot wait to do it again sometime.
Same.
So that was my chat with Jonathan Alexandratos, and they were a lot of fun to hang out with, in case you couldn't tell. We could easily talk about toys for hours upon hours, but that's going to have to be a different podcast altogether. Up next, we're jumping over to the modern action figure world, and we're going to talk about EXO’6’s, which are easily some of the best Star Trek figures to date. Now, EXO’6’ launched during the pandemic, presenting high-end 12-inch Star Trek figures that look so close to the real thing. They're filling a gap for collectors that hasn't existed in a while, and they're doing every iteration of live-action Trek, from the original series to the Berman era and even the current modern shows. But these beauties come at a high price that may shock folks who are not collectors of these things. These limited edition articulated masterpieces average at around $200 per figure, and that might sound like a lot, and it is, but as we're going to explain in this interview, that's actually on the cheap side of this segment of collectibles. Not only that, these figures have been released to the public at a breakneck pace, one that you'd expect from a big company like Playmates or Mattel, and not from a very small business like EXO’6’s. Keep in mind, they are a startup, and the fact that they're releasing the number of figures they are at the rate they're going, that's pretty astounding. So let's spend some time getting to know Schubert from EXO’6’s, understand how his company came to be, and the way they've been able to function so efficiently and successfully while never forgetting the fans. And welcome back to Trek Untold. And now joining me on the other side of the screen, we have Mr. Schubert Tam here. Schubert, how are you?
I'm good. And you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for being here. You know, I just got my very first EXO’6 figure not too long ago. I'm so happy that I have this in my collection. It's beautiful. I got the Cisco, by the way.
Okay.
Beautiful, gorgeous figure. And I'm really excited to be talking with you today about toys.
Star Trek, particularly, right?
Oh, yes, definitely Star Trek toys.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been buying a lot of those. I mean, so,
Okay.
you know, Schubert, let me ask you first question here. I ask all my guests in the show. What's your earliest memory of Star Trek?
Earliest memory of Star Trek? Wow. Toss. I mean, it's all happened at the same time in my mind, okay? Because I was so young that time. Okay. So if you ask me that question, the entire show come up to my mind. Okay.
I'm not surprised. I mean, looking at the toys you guys make, you clearly have a pretty encyclopedic knowledge of this franchise.
Oh yeah. I mean, for the last 6 years, I do nothing but Star Trek. In particular.
It's a pretty great life to have.
Oh yeah, right now I think I'm in the happiest time of my life. I'm doing like 24 hours, 7 days a week of the things that I like to do. Watching Star Trek is like a normal thing for me now. I mean, before it's like I shouldn't be watching DS9 again. Okay, I just watched it last week, but right now I get I need to do some research. I need to see Kira. Okay, so I mean, it's fun. It's very fun right now.
So when you were a kid, did you play with Star Trek toys? Did you have a lot of Star Trek toys growing up?
Not much, but I like Star Trek. That's not much Star Trek toy that time. I think it's Mego, the only thing that we have.
Yeah, what about Mego in the original era? Would have been like, yeah, Mego toys, yeah.
Yeah, Migos. That's the only one that I remember when from the old days. That's in the 70s, mid 70s. Yep.
And did you collect any of the Playmates toys in the 90s when you were an adult?
No. I kind of stopped after middle school. Oh no, junior high, right? Because historians coming in, kicks in, puberty kicks in, party, okay, either party or school or something else. I mean, I stopped for a while, and then by the time I'm 30, it comes back again.
All right, well, let me ask you a little bit about some background information about you, Schubert. Can you tell us where you were born? Who your parents were, and what little Schubert wanted to be when he grew up?
I'm from Hong Kong originally. I'm born in Hong Kong, immigrated to the United States when I was 12. And immediately at that time, Star Trek stayed in my mind. And then I already experienced what Spock experienced, multicultural. I don't know, people don't understand what's going on. That's why Pattern of Force, I think, not Pattern of Force, which the one that in TOS is about the Romulan, I think Terror.
Oh, Balance of Terror?
Yeah, Balance of Terror. Okay, people start saying, "Oh, you are from China." No, I'm not from China. I'm from Hong Kong. Okay, it's different.
It's different.
Okay, that's when I first came here, and then I think I want to make Star Trek figures, even though when I was young.
Wow.
Okay, it's very young. I think it's when I was 15 or 16 years, 15. Yeah, 15 years old. Me and my buddy said, we're gonna make Star Trek figures when we grow up. Okay, and I'm making it right now.
Yeah, you're living the dream. But you know, I mean, back then, it's not really classes to take to make action figures. I mean, did you go to a university or a college to learn a trade?
Yes, went to business school, but I never did anything in business.
So then, how did you actually then get into the toy industry? That's not an easy nut to crack.
Yeah, it's not, because I'm from outside world. Okay, I'm totally in a different part of the business sector. People are getting into action figures. I was in the gambling business. I worked in some gambling establishment. Handicapping. I don't gamble. Okay? I don't like gambling. Analyst. Okay, and I hate that job. And then about in 2009. I got ripped off because I wanted to custom make some Star Trek figures. I got ripped off and I got upset. So I'm gonna make it on my own. Okay, I'm gonna make this on my own. Okay, and then start customizing, doing my own work. Okay, I'm gonna hire a sculptor, sculptor, Spock. But I got ripped off. Okay, because I don't know anything about the industry. Okay, so when I start making them, prototyping them, I always got a bit more, and it didn't come out right. Okay, this is not what I want. I mean, doesn't look like Kirk, doesn't look like Spock. Okay, just have pointed ears. Okay, so I told myself that I'm gonna make it again. So I retry, and I did another line, Warp of Khan. I custom make that and got ripped off again. Okay, and then but I was thinking that eventually someday I will able to have enough knowledge, or I know enough people in the production industry that I can make my figure. But I never think about getting into it. And then by the time around 2014, I was watching Star Trek again. Then I look, hey, anniversary is coming up. Star Trek anniversary is coming up. And I don't see any good Star Trek collectibles out there. And then I always think Star Trek is about the characters, not, I mean, a lot of people collect ships. I like collect ships too, okay? I like building models. But there's not much character-based collectibles. You know what I mean? Character likeness based.
Yeah.
It was very hard in collectibles industry at that time. Hot Toys, a few other companies making realistic 1/6 scale figures, right? So I think, hey, this can be put into the Star Trek franchise or the Star Trek fandoms. They might like it. I mean, after all, it's about the character, right? So I think if I continue making this and gradually putting pictures out into within the social media, someone might pick me up, okay, before 2016, because they have nothing, okay?
True.
They don't have, a lot of company has nothing, okay? And then by 2015, I helped a company, QMX.
Yeah, quantum mechanics.
On 1/6 scale. They were doing some 1/6 figures that time, and they have problem finishing it. And then somehow they got hold of me, and then I helped them up, and then they finished releasing that figure. It was Mouse from Firefly.
Yeah.
And then I took that opportunity because now I have money in my hand. Because QMX is giving me money, so I can have money to help them out to do something. So I use that money to build my relationship in China. Before it's only a $100, $200 thing. Now I have a $20,000 order, okay, or something. Okay, now you have to treat me differently. Okay, so I start building relationship at that time. I took that opportunity. Started out the relationship, and then that was the end of 2015, and then 2016, QMX want to have some figures done for the anniversary, because I think that the CBS has been asking partners around, hey, what do you guys have for 50? Okay, and then the owner, the founder, I think the owner of QMX asked me, do I want to work for them? Okay, so I think, hey, opportunity come. It's here. Okay, I can legitimately do this thing. Okay, and I know how to do it now. Okay, I already put my foot into it to the door. So I took that job. And I flew back, I resigned right away. And I left, I think about 1 week after that. Wow. I left the US and went back to Hong Kong. And from there, I went to China and started building that 1/6 scale production for QMX, as you know, from 2016. And then...
those some great figures too.
Yeah, it was fun. It was fun. I mean, it was really fun. We were able to produce a lot of figures in very short time.
Yeah.
Okay? Yeah. So it all started because of that that hit. I mean, that incident that I helped QMX did. I helped them out, and I established a relationship. From there, I start growing my relationship, my connection in China. Okay, and I continue building it throughout this from 2016 all the way to 2019. Okay,
you're really playing the long game with this.
Yeah. I was I enjoy my life there because I mean, same thing. I was watching Star Trek in China. I was carrying Star Trek figures everywhere I go, and then I have some fun over there. But I know someday, hopefully someday, we can continue building this 1/6 scale Star Trek, and then we can do a lot more Star Trek. So I continue building my relationship and making connections. I'll try to know wherever I can. Just prepare someday if QMX wants to, make it big, I'm able to make it big. Okay, I have all the things ready. Things didn't happen that way, but I actually ended even better.
I would say so, because now you've got EXO’6’s. This is your baby. This is Schubert's company. So, I think the cool thing about them is you define these as museum grade figures. And the amount of research that you do into these figures are just astounding to me. So can you tell us a little bit about how EXO’6’ makes sure that all these figures are the most screen accurate versions ever made?
All this thing all happened since 2009. Okay. When JJ Star Trek came out.
Yeah.
Okay. Remember just now I mentioned, that's how I started around 2009, 2008, around that time. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's around that time I start going into Star Trek. Okay. Again. Okay. Going into different groups. I find out, hey, there are some uniform groups. I need to get into them. They must know this thing really good, because I've been looking at those colors, Star Trek uniform colors. They all change for my screen. Suddenly it looks like green. Suddenly it looks like yellow. Suddenly it looks like something else. So I got to be accurate. Okay. So I think those uniforms fans, they must know this better than anybody. Okay. So I went in there, find out, oh geez, this is deep. And then I hung around with them for a couple of years. So from there, I learned a lot, because they go by millimeter on 1-to-1 scale uniforms. They are very accurate. They are very, very picky. Okay. From there, I was thinking, if I can satisfy this group of Star Trek fans, and I'm able to miniaturize this actual replica, 1-to-1 replica into 1/6 scale, people should like it. Or I can even tell them, hey, that's what it's supposed to look like. Okay. A lot of people don't. They don't know what color is supposed to be. Okay. This is the actual color. Okay. I can actually make this in a smaller scale and educate my friends. My Star Trek friends, show them what is set accurate, what is screen accurate. So I gather all this information. I have tons of information on these. And then from there, I move on to models. Okay. Scale model. Okay. Scale models, they are very, another group of collectors that are very into precisions, screen accuracy. Okay, from there, I learned a lot about ships. Okay, and then I learned some background about Star Trek, Aztec painting. I don't know if you're familiar. Star Trek ships has Aztec panels. From there, I learned a lot of those things. It's not related to now, but I used it too. Okay, but anyway, from there, I move on to props. Okay. I find out there's a lot of people that are crazy about props in Star Trek. They say, okay, this thing is only 2 millimeters shorter, and then they'll say this is not right. Well, these are the people that I need to know. If they are so precise, anything coming up from them cannot be wrong. The possibility for it to be wrong is going to be low. Okay, so I start hanging around with them, and then ask them to help me out, to get me some measurements, right? So I got all this information. But at that time, 3D printing and 3D sculpting is not popular. Okay, all of this are just informations, because it's very expensive at that time to have that done by hand. So I continue gathering the information. But right now, I have my own company, so I make my own thing, so all this information can be used. So that's why I do. That's my figures all come up really fast, because I have all the information right here. And the guy and my partner right now in China, I've been training him. That guy never touched Star Trek in his life. But since 2016, actually before that, since 2009, I've been brainwashing him or educating him about Star Trek. So he knows what is set color. He knows what is screen color. He knows what is TNG uniforms. What is Wolf of Khan? Okay, he knows everything. So that's why when I got the license, and then we just prepare for about 4 months, and then we have data right away.
Wow,
so fast, because everything is right there.
So in another lifetime, you were part of the Obsidian Order or something, just being able to brainwash somebody like that. That's pretty amazing, though. And, the way you guys have all the outfits looking, the way you guys have the props looking, the accessories, that is really amazing what you did there. But what really impresses me are the head sculpts. Like I said, I got the Cisco and like holding that Cisco in my hand and just looking at it, I was like, wow, this is Avery Brooks. This is beautiful. So, as a sculptor and working with a toy company, who's been the hardest actor to get their likeness down, and who's been the one that you just got it right away?
None of them we get it right away.
Mm.
All of them we went through a lot of process, even though I like it. Okay, the first scene, first time I look at it, we still have to go through a lot of improvements. Like what you have, what we have released right now, went through a lot of refinement. Because even though I was working for QMX, okay, I've been prototyping on my own. I spend my own money prototyping things because I'm a guy that like to go fast. I don't like to sit around. Okay, so I don't want to waste time either. So the time I spend in China is all about prototyping. So most of this had started years ago. Okay, it's just being refined. Okay, during this time. So, but if you say the hardest, I would say Shatner.
Yeah, I could see that.
Hardest. Yeah, I mean, it's very famous among the 3D sculptors. Shatner and Harrison Ford are the one of those two most difficult a person to sculpt.
Yeah, I've noticed that with a lot of toys. Like even looking at other toys that other companies have done. Like I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the eyes or the nose. I mean, what do you think has been the problem with William Shatner's face?
Okay, let's say the first Kirk that we did, that I did, that I'm responsible, was the QMX Kirk. Okay, he went through about 7 people. We have one sculptor, Inigo. He responsible for it. Okay, but we do second eye, which means another person look at the sculpt and try to point out the problems, because the sculptor looking at a character for so long, their brain start playing tricks on it. They try to make things look like what they want. I mean, this is real. Okay, I study that actually. Okay, so we always try to use another sculptor or another person that have a professional eyesight on likeness to do commenting. We had 6 guys. Okay, went through Kirk. Then we get a good Kirk. Okay, and Kirk is one of the hardest, even though right now we are still struggling with him. But and then after sculpting, we have another problem. Paint up didn't come out right. I was wondering why. Okay, the sculpt was good, really good. Okay, I can see it right away, Shatner. But bringing it out is another story. Okay, you have to bring up the likeness. The paint up guy has to do it. On the original character we did in 2016, I spent 2 days there at the paint shop. We couldn't. It just looked. He looks nothing like Shatner. Okay, the same sculpt. Okay, the same one. Okay, nothing like him. And then later on, we find out we need to add redness to him. And he came out right away. I mean, a couple of drops was red paint made a huge difference. I mean, none of us could have guessed it, but that's what happened to Shatner. The redness makes a difference. I mean, he has a darker skin tone.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what happened to Shatner. He's still the hardest right now. He's still the hardest.
I mean, you guys are clearly going through months, if not years, of development for these things. But I got to ask, I mean, right now, EXO’6’, they've been pumping out figures so fast. So, I mean, number one, how are you guys able to get them out so quickly? And also, how are you keeping the price so low? And I want to preface it for folks who don't know. 1/6 toy companies like Hot Toys, for example, these days, you're going to pay like $400 for someone like Doctor Strange, $600 for an Iron Man. EXO’6 is doing these likenesses for like around the $200 mark, and you're getting them done like so fast. How are you guys doing that?
Well, I turned the weakness of Star Trek into a strength. When I was in Hong Kong, when I was in China and Hong Kong doing a production for QMX, I noticed Star Trek demand compared to other franchise is, it's no comparison. We are so small, especially for high-end collectible. Demand is really, really, really low. Okay, no factory will willing to talk with me because of my quantity. It's so low. I mean, compared to other factory. So that's not possible to find any factory to have a figure done. Unless I go back, I actually have to go on all fours to beg people, come on, do me a spark. And then say, okay, and then they will do it, okay? Otherwise, they won't even look at me because the quantity is so slow, so low. I mean, they say, what is Star Trek? They know what is Star Wars, okay? They know Marvel, they know Spider-Man, they know Superman, they know everything, but what is Star Trek? What is this triangular thing? I mean, everyone has one, okay? They don't know, okay? Nobody want to work with me. Okay, so I find out that means we only can make maybe one figure or two figures a year. And then the next year, probably the guy who owned the license will quit because it's not making money at all. Yep. Okay, and there's to pay for the franchise. Okay, there's a time limit there, right? Yeah. So I think the only way to make this is to have my own production.
So you're running basically everything yourself. Like EXO’6’ has its own production company.
Yeah, the own production. I have to do everything on myself, okay? In order for me to produce. How can I do that? That's not possible because I have nothing, right? So I start training, okay? So how do I train? Training has to start from the bottom, right? So I start using very simple Star Trek uniforms. That's why we start out with Voyager, okay? Well, we start with First Contact. Yeah. We find out, oh, geez, this is difficult. Okay. So we use Voyager. Voyager has the most simple uniform, right? So I have to train our production. Okay. Just do a good Voyager uniform. Forget about everything else. Okay. Do a good Voyager uniform. Once they get hold of it, they start expanding. They go back to First Contact. They're able to do another First Contact Cisco, like what you got. Okay. Actually, the quality is better than our First Contact quality, okay? Craftsmanship is better because everyone in my production are first-time worker. They never work in this field before, okay? They all start from like knowing nothing, okay? And that's why we all build things from the ground up, okay? Because they're specialized in Star Trek uniforms, especially Voyager, okay? So they can crank it up fast. They don't do anything else, okay? So right now, my production is entire Star Trek uniforms. I don't do anything other than Star Trek uniform. So they become a specialist. When they're specialized on one thing, they don't need to train. They can do it fast, still fresh in their mind. Because production is not like, I mean, we have to do everything but in a systematic way, right?
Yeah.
Not like one figure per figure, okay? Every time when we have a new production, the worker has to be trained. What you're going to do at this step, right? Every time we have to train them. But if they continue doing one job, like 2 years or 1 year or 2 years, they'll be really good about it. Okay, they will be really good at it as we build on time. So that's why we can crank up so fast because we train them while we're producing them, and we have the information, we have the content over here in my brain, okay? I keep feeding information in China, okay? The factory, the guy whom I trained, he knows exactly what I want because he was with me 24/7. I mean, like few years. He knows exactly what's going on. So every time when I mention, he knows what's going on and he can pass on the information down to the worker. And then we also have a training system there. Before we do like Cisco, we start redoing some of the old stuff like data uniform practicing, see if there's anything improved. Okay, we start training that. When we finish Tuvok or someone, immediately Cisco goes in, jumps in, and then we don't do one figure at a time. We do about 6 or 7 figures at the same time. Some will move faster, some will not. Okay, some might we do 2-step every 2 weeks, but one will like do really fast. Okay, it depends. It really depends on the situation. We juggle around because we are small.
Yeah.
Okay, that means we have more agility, not like big company. If they want to move, they talk about they need a whole week. I only need 1 hour. Then I can change everything. Okay, I call everybody in. Okay, during lunchtime, tell them what we're gonna do. Okay, after lunch, we start doing it. Big company, they need a whole week to prepare. Okay, because they have to change everything. The whole system, all tables, everything have to change. Right. So that's how I took advantage of the smaller market of Star Trek. Okay, I built a small production company that fit into the Star Trek market. Okay, and I never go over. I do not have wishful thinking because I was trained not to. Remember, I work for a gambling company. I mean,
Yep.
I'm trained not to be objective. Do not overlook. I never over. I know, and wishful thinking. That's why I call it. I don't do wishful thinking. Okay, I don't hope. I don't think. I don't believe. Oh, I can sell 10,000. Okay, so I will make 10,000 and end up only sell 1,000. Okay, I don't do those kind of things.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm using what I learned in the gambling industry, risk, and apply into what I'm doing right now, and work.
It's pretty amazing too, because you're doing this also during the COVID pandemic. I mean, you started a company that's dealing with China overseas during the pandemic, and you're succeeding really well at this. I mean, you've really kicking butt.
Oh yeah, I'm actually very proud because I'm 7,000 miles away. Okay, and able to do it in pandemic, and I'm able to ship everything out faster than anybody.
You've been
So
on time. Yeah, it's been the coolest thing about you guys. It's like there's companies like Super 7 who have been very, very hit badly by the pandemic. Like they're super slow. NECA has had lots of issues, delays getting things to port. But you guys, I don't think I've missed any deadlines, or if you have, it's been like very minimal. So yeah, whatever you're doing, I mean, you guys are doing it awesomely.
I'm doing that like in the gambling business, like a ball game. They have to start at 9.
Yeah,
Right?
that's true.
I cannot change the time. So I'm doing the same thing right now. Okay, I'm using everything that I learned, that I gained. I'm 60. I'm not young. Okay, everything that I know and put into EXO’6’. Okay, I'm overdoing a lot of things, but it becomes very effective and efficient. Very, very efficient. I do not need to monitor. Okay, because I use a Navy SEAL type of management. I don't know if you're aware that we watch everybody's back. We don't need to watch our own back because I know my buddy next to me will watch mine. Okay, that is how my entire operation work in China.
That's really cool.
Down to the janitor. Okay, even when they use the restroom, we all think about the next person who's doing this. Who is coming in next? Let's make it easier for him.
Wow.
That's why my production is one of the most efficient and effective production in 1/6.
Yeah,
right
it
now.
sounds amazing. Yeah.
But I don't do anything else. People come to us and, hey, can you do this for us? No, I don't do this. We only do Star Trek. Okay, we're not doing anything else. We don't need your.
That's good. I don't want you doing anything else. I only want you doing Star Trek because they're beautiful.
Yeah.
And on that note too, I know, you guys have all sorts of things in the works. And again, reminder, Schubert, this is going to be airing in like late January, mid-Feb. So, but Schubert, can you tell us, can you tease us about anything that's going to be coming up in 2023? What can you tell us without getting in trouble?
Okay, we have a time space difference right now. Okay, we are the space right now. We're gonna just change the time. Okay, to end of January. So I can tell you something supposed to happen, but at the air date already happened. Okay, Spock's supposed to be out.
That's the motion picture Spock.
Yeah, motion picture out is supposed to be out. We're supposed to release it next week. Okay, we are talking to you this week right now. Next week we're supposed to release it. Okay, so everybody's supposed to have a Spock right now. Okay, and then we are prototyping McCoy, but McCoy will take a little longer. Why? Because McCoy will have a heavy chest. Okay? We need to give him a chest, okay? Because this got sold up, okay? So it will take a little bit longer. He has more things on him: a buckle, a pendant, right? A few more things than Kirk and Spock. So he will take a little bit longer. Probably, I'm looking at April.
Okay.
To have McCoy out, and then we complete motion picture, and then probably I believe 7's out. Okay, okay, space time. Okay, 7's supposed to be out now when you air this. Okay, hopefully she is.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, and then I do not know the review. Hopefully it's good because she is our EXO 7-01-001. That's the first figure that we want to make. We didn't pull it out until now. Okay. Took us that long.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah, took us that long to have her done because she need her own body.
Yep.
Okay. Maybe I talk about 7. Yeah. 7 is using her own body. Okay. This is our first female body. And then it's seamless. Nobody want to do it for us because the metal skeleton, the order is too low.
Yeah,
Okay,
and for folks who don't know what seamless means in toys, seamless means that you can't see the joints. They're basically covered by a sort of like fleshy vinyl on top.
Yeah, 7 is that because of a catsuit, right?
Yep.
It's only a partial seamless. Her shoulder, her hip joint is not seamless. We don't need that to be seamless, right? Just the legs, arms, okay, those and neck, we need those, and her upper body, okay, and then the skeleton of 7 is metal.
Yeah.
Nobody want to take our order because we're making only so little. Okay. So that's why 7 is so expensive compared to others. Okay.
Wow.
And I don't think
it's still not even that expensive, by the way, for what it is.
We try to control costs. Okay. There's one cost you guys don't have, me. I did not calculate the time that I spent into the MSRP, into the cost. And I am the one who spent most time into this. I mean, actually, everything come out so fast. If you think this nice, it's all because of the information that I gathered all this time. None of that cost was added in our production cost. I did not add any of those. I consider those as my own time. Okay, that's my own time. I'm sharing my time with the fans. Okay, I'm sharing that part of the course. I took that. I mean, I spent it already. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's priceless. I think I cannot charge.
Well, thank you for that. But that pretty much covers, those guys. What about TNG, DS9? What about, Strange New Worlds or Discovery? Is there anything coming in 2023 for those guys?
Probably within a couple of months, we're gonna show some TNG.
Okay.
Okay. And then you should have already seen the next character for DS9. I do not know if it's Jasia, okay, as of now, okay, because we have a time space here, okay. Either Jasia or Odo.
Oh, okay, wow.
Okay, or but sure, either there's 3 of them. Okay, I don't know which one. One of them already we already put up. Okay, and then we have a few surprises coming up that I will not tell you. Okay, you probably see that in April.
Something monster! I want more. I want more toys. I want more things. Oh, I gotta wait till April now.
That don't worry. But you have other things. I mean, you still have a Locutus, right? Locutus is supposed to be delivered within a month or 2, right?
Yeah, that's true.
And then and then who else? And then Shan's supposed to be releasing soon too. If this is February, okay. If this is January or February, yeah. 2 months, Shan's supposed to be here. Okay. Locutus is supposed to be here about 1 month from now. So I mean, it won't stop. It will continue. Okay, it will continue for at least 2 more years like this. Every month you have something.
Wow. That's pretty amazing that you guys can actually do that, because it really feels like every month it's been like a new pre-order, and I'm just like, here, EXO’6’s, take my money. But yeah, no, it's amazing what you guys are doing and how fast you're pumping these out, and yeah, you have not lost any quality yet either, which is wonderful.
Yeah, hopefully, we hopefully quality always goes up.
Yeah,
okay? Always goes up.
I've only bought one so far, but from what I've seen from other people reviewing it, I mean, it seems like, because you guys are so small, you're able to adapt just like the Borg really quickly and change things on the fly and make some great decisions that I think have made some wonderful toys.
Correct. I use a lot of Star Trek stuff into this operation. A lot, really a lot. Like you said, boy, that's how I think. We assimilate what other company can do, and then we do it our way. Okay. Yeah, I mean, production's practically like this. I mean, I have guys go out talk to other production people. I mean, I have a guy, my manager. I told him, every lunch you have to spend with another production company, okay? Some guy with another production. You have to know, okay, what kind of new things they can do, okay? So don't let me know that you're having lunch on your own, you have to call one of those guys. Okay, continue monitoring, improving ourselves. Okay, so we can do better Star Trek figures. That's why our figures will only get better, supposed to. Okay, because our experience is gaining. Okay, it's gaining. I mean, it can only be better and better.
I think you guys are doing it. All right, so Schubert, thank you for some of those reveals. I mean, my wallet hates you, but I love you because you're doing great stuff here. One of the last things here I want to ask you is, what is your dream action figure to make now that you're doing this? Like, you're in charge of this company, you're doing whatever you want. What toy do you need to see before your company shuts down, if it ever shuts down?
For there's so many Star Trek stuff. Undiscovered country.
Okay, Star Trek 6.
I want the complete crew.
Yeah, the final appearance of all the original crew.
Yep.
Okay, I hope you get there. I want to see that too.
And then I have a undiscovered country.
All right, well, Schubert, thank you so much for chatting with me today, and it's been real wonderful to talk with you. And I'm very excited to give you all of my money. So keep making more DS9 so I can do that. And also, I know I did see in that Adam Savage tested video, you showed off the Empress Giorgio figure. I love that one. I cannot wait to see how that's going to look.
Yeah, I was going to show, but I think I shouldn't. I should save it.
We'll save it. So yeah, well, thank you so much. I appreciate your time today.
All right. So I talk to you. Bye-bye.
That's the end of part 1, but make sure to come back next week for part 2 with Lisa Klink as we continue our Voyager deep dive, as well as spend some time discussing a few other Trek things that she was a part of, plus a bunch of other fun, personal, and professional stories. So don't miss it. That's it for this week's episode of Trek Untold. Until next time, don't forget to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Trek Untold, all one word. If you'd like to directly support this podcast, please consider becoming a Patreon supporter over on patreon.com/TrekUntold, which gives you access to some great perks that can't be beat. Or pick up some merchandise from our store, or use my Amazon shop link to check out all kinds of different Star Trek merchandise. Links for all these things are in the show notes. Shout out to Triple Fiction Productions for being a key sponsor of Trek Untold. Don't forget to check them out and all of the fine folks whose ads you've seen or heard on this podcast too. If you have any questions, feedback, or comments for the show, or would like to suggest a guest or discuss sponsorship options for any of these episodes in the future, send me a message at trekuntold@gmail.com. I hope to see you here again as we uncover more untold stories from Star Trek and beyond, and get to know even more amazing people who have contributed to this ever-expanding universe. Until next time, I'm Matthew Kaplowitz, and remember, fortune favors the bold.
Trek Untold is sponsored by TrekSphere.com, promoting fan-produced Star Trek content in all forms, is powered by the RageWorks podcasting network, and is affiliated with Nerd News Today.